So, what happens when one of the world's most powerful AI companies looks one of the world's most powerful governments in the eye and just says no? Well, you get an absolutely epic showdown that could literally define the future of technology. And it all kicked off with a single document. And no, this is not science fiction. This actually happened. On February 27, 2026, the President of the United States issued an executive order that, for all intents and purposes, declared war on the AI company Anthropic. Not for spying, not for breaking laws, but for sticking to its ethical guns. All right, so what was actually in this order? Let's dive in and break down the directive that sent massive shockwaves from DC all the way to Silicon Valley. Okay, so the official title sounds super bureaucratic, right? Protecting the national security AI supply chain. But what it really did was simple and honestly brutal. It was a complete and total ban preventing the entire US federal government from using any of Anthropic's tech. And that includes its super popular AI, Claude. And you gotta understand, this wasn't just some gentle recommendation. This order had some serious teeth. It gave federal agencies just 180 days to completely stop using Anthropic's products. It forced a review to kill all existing contracts. And maybe most importantly, it sent a really chilling message to the private sector, strongly advising any government contractor to cut their ties too. Analysts, they jumped on this immediately. They saw exactly what it was, a line in the sand. The government was essentially forcing a choice. Either you throw your ethics out the window, or we're going to lock you out of the entire federal marketplace. This set a precedent that could change the whole game for tech and government forever. But wait, how did we even get to this point? I mean, it's pretty extreme. To really get it, we have to rewind the clock a bit, back to the multi-billion-dollar deal that kicks this whole thing off. So here's what happened. The Pentagon put this massive, unrestricted AI contract on the table. And they offered it to both Anthropic and its main competitor, OpenAI. But Anthropic drew some really hard lines. They said, sure, we'll help with intelligence analysis. But when it came to using their AI for mass domestic surveillance on US citizens, that was a hard no. And for fully autonomous weapon systems that could make kill decisions without a human, absolutely not. Anthropic's CEO, Dario Amodei, he laid it out perfectly. He basically said this wasn't about business for them. It was about their core mission, a moral imperative. This was their red line, he said, and it just wasn't for sale. So, what happens next? Well, with Anthropic taking a stand, the Pentagon just turned to their biggest competitor, OpenAI. And this moment right here created this massive split right down the middle of the AI industry. And this is really where you can see the two completely different philosophies. People started saying Anthropic's red lines were carved in stone, while OpenAI's were written in pencil. See, OpenAI took the contract, but they did it by agreeing to these vague national security exceptions, which a lot of critics said basically made their ethical rules meaningless. That decision, it set off a domino effect. Anthropic's refusal and the government's ban just forced everyone, and I mean everyone in the tech world, to pick a side. Now, Anthropic didn't just roll over. Not at all. They launched this full-scale public campaign. First, total transparency. They published the negotiation documents for everyone to see. Second, they made a public commitment, creating a legal charter to lock in their red lines. And third, they went global, looking for allies in countries that actually had stricter rules on AI ethics. And the public reaction? It was immediate and it was huge. In just the first 24 hours after the ban was announced, downloads of their AI, Claude, shot up by 350%. It gets better. Positive 5-star reviews for the app leaped by an incredible 420%. And online, the conversation just exploded. The hashtag #StandWithAnthropic was tweeted over 15 million times. It became the #1 trending topic in the entire world. The industry itself was totally split right down the middle. You had giants like Google and Salesforce coming out and publicly backing Anthropic. But then you had others, like Microsoft and Amazon, who, have deep ties to OpenAI and big government contracts. They sided with the administration. And this is really interesting. On the world stage, while the US government was slamming doors, other major powers were basically rolling out the welcome mat. The European Union, Canada, Japan, they all signaled strong support for Anthropic's ethical position, creating this powerful international counter-narrative.
But this whole fight is far, far from over. The conflict has just moved from the White House into two brand new battlegrounds, the courtroom and the open market.
So Anthropic fired back with a lawsuit. They're arguing that the ban violates their constitutional rights, specifically free speech and property rights. The government's defense? They're saying, look, this isn't a punishment, it's just a purchasing decision. We get to choose who we do business with, especially when it comes to national security. So what does the public think about all this? Well, polling shows a pretty clear majority of Americans, 58%, are siding with Anthropic. And what's really amazing is that this support crosses party lines. This shows that the desire for ethical AI isn't really a partisan thing at all. So that brings us to the billion-dollar question. Can Anthropic actually survive this? I mean, really? Well, before the ban, the federal market was about 15% of their revenue. Now, that's a big hit for sure, but it also shows that the vast majority of their business, a whopping 85%, comes from the private sector and from regular consumers. That gives them a really strong foundation to try and weather this storm. So if you take away just one thing from all of this, what should it be? I think it's that the battle between Anthropic and Washington really signals a massive shift. We've officially entered a new era where a company's ethical principles can be just as valuable and maybe just as powerful as its technology. This entire incredible story really boils down to one fundamental question. As we march forward into a world that's going to be shaped more and more by artificial intelligence, who gets to decide what its future looks like? The innovators who build it, or the governments that want to use it? The answer is still being written.